Welcome to the Peace of God from the God of Peace, an optimistic, conversational, thought-provoking commentary on Paul's letter to the Philippians. My hope is that you'll gain a better understanding of the New Testament and be encouraged in your daily living. Now, here's today's conversation. And let me just say something about translations. There's some that are very literal and strict and almost word for word. And if you get too literal and word for word, you lose something because Greek isn't like English. And so the way words are used in Greek, the same exact words are used with a different culture and different thinking and different nuances. So if you bring those words over directly into English, like some people have tried to do, then it comes out wrong. So a good translation has to literally not always literally transfer the thoughts in the Greek to the thoughts in English. But the disadvantage is people bring in their theology and what they're thinking, and as they do that translation and that transition, they'll pick words that kind of support their thinking and their perspective. So it's good to read a number of translations. It's okay to and read some that are very paraphrased and like this one, like the Mirror and expanded, or the Amplified Bible, or the remember the Living Bible was more of a paraphrase, and then New American Standard and the King James, of course, are more strict type translations. So it's good to really look at different ones. Nothing wrong with that, because translators are not inspired. Okay, verse 20. For I fully expect and hope that I will never be ashamed. Hey, don't we all? I gave up hoping I'll never be ashamed, because it's less and less, but once in a while I mess up and I am ashamed of myself, and it's usually at home, That's just life. That's part of being human. And once you get past that and you get past yourself being supposed to be perfect or something, you just kind of laugh at yourself and say, okay, I'll add that to my list of things to watch out for. And then you're free. There's a lot of freedom in getting older and getting past yourself and trying to be perfect and being overly ashamed. It's okay to be a little bit ashamed because you messed up, but some people live in shame. It's not healthy. It's not healthy, and a lot of religion it takes advantage of that tendency for us to feel shame way beyond what we need to and what's healthy, and fear and guilt. I mean, John has to deal with this all the time and help people get past that in the right way, not just ignore it and say, well, I never do anything wrong. That's not the solution. But on the other hand, sometimes your worst enemy is yourself. Some people beat themselves up more than they do anybody else. I don't mean physically, but emotionally and everything.
But that shame goes back, the recognition of shame happens between age 2 and 3. That's how deep it goes. So
now I know why I'm the way I am.
Yeah, well, it is, and children that have experienced severe trauma at 2 to 3, they probably wrestle with it more than a carefree 2 or 3 year old.
Yeah. So probably the two extremes is you can overshame a kid where he's just pulled in and it destroys him. On the other hand, if a kid isn't disciplined
he'll be wild. He'll be wild. He may be a little narcissist.
Yeah. This is typical mom and dad thing. My dad was pretty strict, and he didn't put up with any nonsense, and mom was always hugging me and saying, oh, poor sweet baby. And he would kind of get upset with it and go, quit babying the boy. He's got to become a man.
Yeah.
So somehow that balanced out. I got the nurturing, and yet I got the, hey, stick it in and be a man, so.
There is one little thing that this would be a good place to say it, because we typically don't we do New Testament. But in Proverbs, I believe there's a scripture that we've all read in the church world I think it's in Proverbs, raise up a child in the way he should go,
yes,
and he will not depart. Is that in Proverbs, I think?
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, I think it was on GAN I learned this. I'm not sure. Where in the Hebrew, it's much richer and more accurate translation in the Hebrew. And it is, raise up a child in the way he should go, and he will not depart from thee, and meaning they won't rebel and act crazy. And what I get from that, as being a mom and being a therapist and everything, is you have your child, and you recognize each child to be unique and different, and that's the way he should go. But you don't give them free run, right? Because you have to modify their behavior and teach them. But you don't try to put those children in a box and conform to be. Well, I want you to be just like the competitive boy. I want this boy. Well, this boy's not like that,
Yeah. So it's not. You raise up a child the way you think he should go. I mean,
you have to nurture what you said. You nurture. You recognize their gifts that God gave them, and then you nurture that, and you help them to learn what they are. You give them the opportunity, and then your child will always feel safe with you, and they won't. Yeah. So I had to put that in there.
No, that's good. That's it. I've heard that, and I think you're right, and certainly you would see it in your work. And so maybe the key words there are he and should. So raise him up the way he should go, or she should.
Yeah. But you have to
get the person they are.
Yeah, but you have to get to know your child. You have to know. Right. You have to know your child.
The should part is the way they should go based on who they are, but also based on what's right and wrong. So it's more complicated than, okay, kid, suck it in and go do what I say you should do because we got the Old Testament here. So that's a good point.
But a wild child, I mean, that kind of goes without, how to conduct yourself. But that's not the gift or the talent, that's, just recognizing in your child that what makes them tick.
That's right. And that's good.
And that's what it is, because we get to know Jesus, and he knows us, and it's the same thing, and he will help us nurture what we have to offer in humanity. And so I love it. I loved hearing that.
Very good. Yeah. I had a lot of people, I think I don't know about most, but a lot of people have really pretty good parents. I had good parents who were, they kept us in line, but they allowed that flexibility too. And they didn't try to just control everything, because a lot of kids, if you over control them, they're going to bust out and do the opposite, Okay. All right. So I fully expect and hope that I will never be ashamed, but that I will continue to be bold for Christ as I have been in the past. Okay, he's been bold for Christ. He wants to keep doing that, and he's hoping he won't be ashamed by maybe misconduct or whatever. And I trust that my life will bring honor to Christ whether I live or die. Okay, and we're about to get into one of those memorable verses. For to me, living means living for Christ, and dying is even better. Now, a lot of people live the opposite this way. Living is, I don't really want to live because it's really tough, but man, I'm scared to death to die. And so they're torn between two things they don't want to do. Paul was torn between two things he did want to do. And he goes on and says, but if I live, I can do more fruitful work for Christ. So I really don't know which is better. I'm torn between two desires. I long to go and be with Christ, which would be far better for me if it's all about me. But for your sakes, it is better that I continue to live. And so I don't know about you, but as I get older, I kind of get tired of life. I've already done everything I want to do, and I'm not in a hurry to check out of here. But a lot of why I want to stay, and I mean, I sometimes think, man, I'd like to go be with the Lord and just be done with all this. I don't know if you ever have those thoughts, but I do. And then I think, well, wait a minute. It's not about me getting what I want. It's about I've got kids. They're grown. They're adults, but they still need me to some degree, me and my wife. And I can help them and I can help friends and I can get on Zoom with others that are believe in the same thing and encourage each other. So there's a lot of good things we do and just enjoy playing the guitar and doing music and, crafts or I just bought two really complicated puzzles where you put them together and the ball goes up and down around and it'll probably take me a month to put it together. And that's my kind of fun. My wife looks at it and goes, oh man, that would give me a headache. But whatever it is you enjoy, go enjoy life. But Paul's saying, I would gladly put all that aside and move on. Because Mike
always said that, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Mike always said that.
He was ready to get out of here. So that's why he did okay. Even his 9 months of struggling, he knew he was getting out of here and he just waited on the Lord. And that taught me a lot. Mike taught me something about how to die and how to trust God. Now, I went out after Mike went through that. I went out and got one of those pink paid papers that you fill out with the doctor and says, don't hook me up to anything. I go, man, I keep one in the car and one on the refrigerator. But even then, you can't be guaranteed. God may say, I want to put my finishing touches on you, and it's going to take 9 months or 8 months or 3 weeks. Now, there's a lady in town who plays harp, and she went and played harp just last Saturday, and she came home and her husband had passed away.
Wow.
And it was just sudden. Sometimes people go fast, sometimes they go slow. And so you never know. But anyway, Paul was saying, man, I don't know which is better for me, just me personally. I just soon get out of here. He'd been stoned, whipped, shipwrecked. He was getting chased down like a dog. It was happening to him like what he did to Christians by the Jews and the Pharisees. So he was ready to get out of here. And yet he says, man, I still got some work to do with all of you. So I'm torn between two desires. I really don't know which is better. I long to go and be with Christ, which would be far better for me, but for your sakes, it's better that I continue to live. So he was ready to go and ready to stay. And that's a good place to be. Good place to be. Some people either they're going through such horrible things in life, they just want to check out of here and they commit suicide. That happens. Also, sometimes people get really old and really struggling with their health and they're just begging God, please take me. I've seen my grandmother got like that, and I can understand it too. And that's not, there's nothing, no shame in that. It's just you're crying out to God and saying, I love you, God. And, I can't wait to be with you, but I'm struggling with this. And he understands. He says, hang in there, I'm coming, it's going to happen. And it always does. Hey, and get this. I don't know if I told you this before, but on each side of me, my neighbors, my two neighbor guys, they both died within a month of each other recently. And I'm going, wow, this is getting really close to home. But I guess it was...
Yeah, they come in threes, huh?
I know. I told my wife, I said, hey, the chance of three guys in a row in three houses dying within a month is very slim. So I'm probably safer here than I am on driving Highway 49, So that's one of those memorable verses. To live is Christ and to die is gain is what some translations have it. That's another famous, memorable verse. Okay, verse 25. Knowing this, everything I've just said, knowing that, I'm convinced that I will remain alive so I can continue to help all of you grow and experience the joy of your faith. Now, I don't think he's saying there's no way I could possibly die. He was just saying, I don't know what's going to happen, and I know which I prefer. I don't even know which I prefer, but I'm convinced. I think he had this sense that God's not done with me yet, and so of the two that I desire, I'm convinced that I will remain alive so I can continue to help all of you and grow and experience in the joy of your faith. So in other words, door number 2, is the one I'm probably going to get, even though there's 2 doors and I'm not sure which one I prefer. And when I come to you again, and I'm not sure he ever got out and went and visited the people at Philippi. I'd have to look into the history of it, but he may have, he may not have. When I come to you again, at least this was his plan, you will have even more reason to take pride in Christ Jesus because of what he's doing through me. Not take pride in me because of all I'm accomplishing. You can take pride in Jesus, in what he's doing through me. Yeah, I'm not fighting him. I'm living for him and all that, and so that's good, but really he gets the credit. He who began a good work in you, as he said up above, will continue it. And he who began a good work in me, says Paul, he's saying here, I think he's going to continue it too. So he kind of ties that in. Verse 27, above all, how many times can he say this? And it's always, this is really what's important. Well, everything was pretty important. But above all, you must live as citizens of heaven. You'd think he'd say, above all, you got to live pure and blameless. Well, that's true. But really, you live in a mindset that you are not, you're not bound and associated with, and your heart and soul and mind are all wrapped up in this world. You're citizens of that other realm, heaven. I know people think heaven's a place, and perhaps it is, but kind of the way it's presented in the New Testament is it's of that other realm. Heaven is that other dimension, that other, not necessarily a location, it's where God resides. It's not the place God resides as much as the realm in which he has his existence, and we will slip into that someday. And if I understand the Bible right and the New Testament right, it's not that you're going to go off to heaven and be in some other dimension. You're going to be on a new recreated earth. He's going to recreate this world, and you're going to be, it's kind of interesting because you're going to be here with, the park behind me, Gehenna in south of Jerusalem. And I don't know if the world will have the same real estate and water and everything, but there's going to be some kind of that's the way it sounds in the New Testament, that God will recreate the world and give us new bodies. He didn't say you're going to go to heaven and float around as a spirit. You're going to be resurrected with a resurrected body that's perfect. And as we understand how the body works, and you look into anatomy and science and everything, you look at the body, it's designed, the way it works, it's designed to live forever because it recreates, all your cells get recreated. And if that worked perfectly, like it probably did originally before sin, people would live forever. We weren't designed to die. But the blessing is that we die and get out of this mess, and we'll be resurrected into a brand new, perfect world, perfect body. Everybody be reconciled to God and to each other. It's really going to be good. It's so good. A lot of people can't believe it. They just go, that's too good to be true. And I go, no, it's so good, it's got to be God doing it. And so that's why the New Testament says things like he'll reconcile everything to himself in heaven and earth. And there's going to be a new creation and new bodies. But anyway, we need to live as citizens of that other realm, even though we're not there. Our mind and heart and our perspective needs to be heavenly oriented. Not just heaven, the place you go to when you die, but that realm of where God is. Like Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven. And the kingdom of heaven is near, and it's within you. It's closer than you think. Conducting yourselves in a manner worthy of the good news about Christ. Okay, yeah, this message of good news is Jesus died on the cross, and you put your trust in him. He died on the cross and saved humanity and took away the sin of the world. And now, as a result, you can put your trust in him and have a better life and a relationship with God. And so live in a manner worthy of that message. The gospel is not so much do this and don't do that, and you got to keep the 10 Commandments. It's an announcement of what God has done for you. So you live in a manner worthy of understanding what God did for you, not live in a manner worthy of keeping the 10 Commandments and the law. And I'm telling you, there's a lot of people trying to live that way. They don't call it that. But that's what the whole book of Galatians was about, was why on earth would you, now that you've began with the Spirit, why would you go back under the law that can't do anything for you except make you miserable? But they did. Like we just said earlier, some people love the drama and trauma, and they got used to it. Above all, you must live as citizens of heaven, conducting yourselves in a manner worthy of the good news about Christ. That's a good way to live. Then, whether I come and see you again or only hear about you. So he knew maybe he won't. He's planning on it. He thinks he's going to, but it doesn't matter. I will know that you are standing together with one spirit and one purpose, fighting together for the faith, not each other. Some places they were fighting each other. But he says you got one purpose, one spirit, fighting together for the faith, which is the good news. Okay, it always comes back to the gospel or the good news, or that message about Jesus coming, dying on the cross, and bringing life to everyone, whether they realize it or not, whether they understand it or not, whether they want it or not. He says, I'm doing this for humanity because it needs to be done. And then we'll go from there in this life and in eternity, reconciling everybody to himself and making everything right. And by the way, that's the only way I can live with all this evil that goes on in the world. It's just disgusting. It's horrible. And if God allows evil and doesn't ever make it all right and leaves it wrong forever, that's really depressing. That's not, to me, that's not much of a God. That's a God who creates a world, lets it fall, saves a few people, because that's all he can save or wants to save, and then lets everything stay wrong for eternity. I'm going, what kind of God and Savior is that? I mean, woe to me to say he can't do that. He can if he wants, but I just don't think that's what he wants to do, and I don't think he's that puny. I think he's going to be successful in saving this world because it needs to be saved and he loves it. I mean, it's kind of simple. The simplicity of the gospel, Paul calls it. Okay, standing together in one spirit, one purpose, fighting together for the faith, which is the good news. Don't be this is interesting. Don't be intimidated in any way by your enemies. Okay? He doesn't say don't have any apprehension or fear, or I'm sure every time the guards moved him to another cell, he didn't know if he was going to get his head cut off or whatever. But he didn't let them intimidate him, because intimidation means you're letting people change your behavior or change what you feel and what you think and what you say. And so you can have some fear and apprehension, but you still stick with the good news and you tell people and you say, I'm not changing. I'm not going to be intimidated by you. So don't be intimidated in any way by your enemies, even though you might be a little fearful and apprehensive, because that would be normal. Even Jesus said, I'm anxious about the cross. Can this cup pass from me? I don't want to go through this. As a human being, I don't want to go through this, but your will be done. So even Jesus experienced anxiety or apprehension, but he was obedient to the Father, and he didn't let them intimidate them in that they could change his behavior or what he believed or his trust in the Father. This will be a sign to them that they are going to be destroyed, but that you are going to be saved even by God himself. Now, here's another good example of a verse that people will read into this, what they've been taught. They would read it this way. This will be a sign to them that they're going to be going to hell and that you are going to be going to heaven. Okay? We read in this super drama, trauma, eternity thing. Not that eternity isn't real in there, but that's not what he's talking about. These words, destroyed and saved, don't mean heaven and hell. Destroyed means to be literally destroyed, to be taken apart and completely disabled. And it's, by the way, that's the same. Remember I talked about translators? You got to be a little careful. In John 3:16, when it says, God loved the world so much that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have eternal life. Why did they pick the word perish? It's the word destroy. So if you read it with the Greek word destroyed, that they won't be destroyed, but will have life that's oriented with eternity. It's not everlasting life, by the way. And that's another little thing that translators do because they bring their theology with them. And so here he's saying, don't be intimidated by your enemies. It's going to be a sign. When you're not intimidated by them, it'll be a sign that they're going to be destroyed, that they're not going to win, that you got something that's superior to what they have, and they're going to be thinking it through and go, wow, I'm headed to some kind of destruction here, some kind of not doing well, and that you are going to be delivered. Anytime you see the word saved in the New Testament, it's the word delivered. It does not mean you won't go to hell. That's not what the word means. It just simply means to be delivered from something. So you always say, delivered from what? It's going to be a sign to them that they're going to be destroyed, but you're going to be delivered by God himself. He goes on and says, you have been given not only the privilege of trusting Christ, but also the privilege of suffering for him. Whoa, wait a minute. You've got the privilege of trusting Christ. I like that part. You've also been given the privilege of suffering for him. Do I have to? And Paul goes, sometimes you do. Don't worry about it. The two go together. If you trust him, you can suffer for him. If you have to suffer for Christ in some way, especially outside of your control, and we're not talking about being an annoying evangelical and people on Facebook make fun of you. Sometimes it's in order. I mean, sometimes Christians ask for the persecution they get, and then that makes them feel all the more special and standing up for the truth and everything. But when you're suffering as he did because he's standing up for Christ, that's one thing. And it's a privilege to suffer for him. And this is amazing because if you go study not just the New Testament, but the early church before the 4th century, they considered, they would, in fact, somewhere in Acts it says after they got persecuted and suffered, they went and praised God that they were worthy of suffering for him. Thank you for watching this presentation of the Common Sense Commentary Series. Remember, God loves you more than you will ever know, and he will never leave or forsake you. Just put your trust in him. If you have a question or a comment, you can contact me atccliftonjones.com. That'sccliftonjones.com. Now, go and enjoy your daily walk with God.